So we are currently live. Um, Good evening, everyone. Uh, my name is Sayuti. You know me even on X as Sayuti. So, everyone, can you introduce yourselves and kind of tell us um, how you found out about this series? Who wants to go first?
All right, I'll go. So the first, so I'm Alex from Iskandaria, and the first time I actually heard about the series was back when I think Godspear was being released. I saw, I want to say, FFA addicts. They were posting about the cover of the book, and actually, right here, I have my copy right here that LL Stevens wonderfully gave to me. I won it in a giveaway. It made me so happy. It's so nice, and she even signed it, and she gave me so many little cards. Actually, I
Yeah,
have them over here.
really generous in that. Yeah.
They're so beautiful, and I remember seeing it, and I went, "Oh, that cover! This cover is stunning." So immediately afterwards, I went on to Goodreads. I looked up the book, added it to my TBR, and then I went to book one and I read the synopsis. I was like, okay, that's interesting. So I added it onto my TBR, and then I said, that's it. But come a year later, when Walled City's coming out, I see Chidi and Yusayudi screaming from the rooftop saying, "You need to read the series. You need to read the series." And then I see Janny reads this series. I'm like, and then she says it's great. And I go, well, I have to. I have to read it. So I think it was a couple days after my birthday. I was in a reading slump. I'm like, okay, well, it's about time. Let me pick this book up. And I started up Sordaneon, got my nice copy that the library got rid of and gave to me. And I ended up just loving it. I was like, the one book in so long that I was like, oh, I can't stop. It's so good, and it pulled so many emotions out of me. It was just so amazing, and I was so glad I finally listened to all those voices, you Janny, you Sayudi, and you Chidi, to actually go and read it because it was just impeccable.
That was great. Okay, I think I'm going to go next. Um, I saw like last was it last year? Yeah, early last year, maybe around February. He was just kind of talking about raving about these books, and what actually caught me was I think, can I find the quote here? Let me just leave it. Anyways, like there's a particular scene between Mark Frederick and Dorian after um okay, I wanted us to go a bit spoiler free before we go spoilers, but like after a certain massive loss to Mark Frederick, right? And kind of he was confronting like Dorian tried to be there, like he kind of isolated himself, and he was then telling him, I know when I start talking about this quote, everyone will get it. Like he was talking about, okay, you you think like you think I can't, maybe let me just paraphrase, like okay, um these that the how did he even go about but anyways, like the quote was okay, he thinks he's kind of right, he thinks like he thinks he knows everything correctly, and he wants to kind of fight. People ask him to fight for them, he fights for them, but at the end of the day, when everything is said and done, like he will realize this world is kind of fighting for, and the kind of people he's trying to fight for, like none of those kind of people exist because nobody else is like him, you understand? So that quote kind of like stayed with me throughout the day. Then randomly, I think I even started reading the Brothers Karamazov around the same day, but I tried opening the first chapter of Sordaneon, the ebook. I read the first page and I said, oh, let me just read the next page. Before I knew it, I think I read about 10% and I couldn't put it down. I had to actually, I think the next 2, 3, 4 days, I was just reading Sordaneon and like I even abandoned the Brothers Karamazov. I couldn't get back to the Brothers Karamazov at all until when I was done. Yeah, that was when I knew, yeah, yeah, it was kind of God sent for me, the series. Who wants to go next?
I'll go next. Hopefully my internet holds up. But I just saw everybody raving about it one day, and I'm a bandwagon. If if everybody likes a book, I'll start reading it. And I was very impressed with the um, the opening chapters because I mean anybody could tell you I'm a big, I guess, book one critic. I'm not very good with book ones. I kind of like, I don't know. I just like things feeling established and like kind of like the like balls already moving type of thing. I like to like rush my way into stories sometimes, which might be just a critique of as me as a reader sometimes. Just a flaw of mine. But this story felt so polished and the road felt so massive and political intrigue was the biggest selling point for me. I love politics. I can talk about politics all day. I mean, that's mostly what I read, just nonfiction politics. And so when I was reading this, I was just blown away. It was just astounding to me, to be honest. So,
I can't
Okay.
remember exactly how I heard about the Triempery Revelations, uh, other than I saw people on Twitter who were recommending it. But at the time that I found it, I had just spent at least a year on Wars of Light and Shadow, and I had just finished Song of the Mysteries. Well, that was such a good ending. It tied everything up so well that I was in the deepest reading slump I had ever been in. I could not get interested in anything else. In the field of fantasy or science fiction because I had just been blown away by this awesome series, and somewhere in there, uh, I I think I read an excerpt online from Sordaneon. It was probably the first chapter, and as we know, the first chapter of Sordaneon hits like a punch in the nose right from the very first, and I was hooked almost immediately when we got that opening sequence, uh, with the birth and the death and everything else. Just within the first few pages, I knew that I was onto something that was going to be really good, and I sure am glad I stayed with it.
All right. I tried that's actually interesting. So like I tried sending something in the private chat and it couldn't
It's
let
there.
me
It came up.
yeah, that's there.
yeah,
It's there.
Yes,
yeah.
Thank you.
I got it.
So yeah, how did I find this book? Blaise Ancona from Under the Radar Books covered this. He has a blog and he reviews books that are not well known, that are off the beaten trail, and he reviews them thoroughly. And he and I were corresponding pretty heavily because I like reading books that are off the beaten trail because so much of what I like is not necessarily the mainstream of what everybody's talking about. So he was the first one that said I absolutely had to read this. And given that I don't read hundreds of books a year and I read what I read very carefully, it took me a while to get to it. And then I had to order it through Uncle Hugo's, which is an independent bookstore. And it took them a few months to get a hold of it. But it finally came. And right out the gate, top-notch read. It's quite evident that L.L. Stevens knows her stuff, that she spent years developing this world, the depth and the planning that it went into just the setting alone. And what hooked me immediately from the start was the passion. The characters show their emotions. They're totally unafraid to spill it all over the page. This is not an intellectual book so much as a passionate book. It's a book about the relationships people have, the difficulties, the good ones, the bad ones, and the fact that the characters evolve as the pages turn. Very, very impressive. So I came to understanding how this book came about later when L.L. Stevens told me that Peter Stampfel told her to go back and write this book to kick off the series because she had originally started the series in a different place. And that was a stroke of editorial brilliance because, in many ways, I felt this book was the strongest of all of them. Very impressive series, very impressive work. But it was Blaise Ancona who blazed a trail on that one. If you haven't checked out Under the Radar books, it's a good place to find stuff that not everybody has heard about. That is his specialty.
Under the radar.
Yeah, Under
Yeah,
the Radar.
that's
Under the radar.
Under the
Okay.
Radar is a Under the Radar is a good place. I've counted some of their recommendations from including there was one I seem to have forgotten the title of the book. Janny recommended it first, and then I saw it again from Under the Radar. Stone Dance of the Chameleon, yes, by Ricardo Pinto. Yeah. But then I
That
happened to
brings
find
us
Triempery Revelations from PL Stewart. I was just scrolling through Twitter.
all right.
PL Stewart recommended it as a good place for people that like Janny's work. So I was like, if I find, since I found Janny's, because I had been on a hangover from Wars of Light and Shadow for like 3 months. That was last year. I had finished Wars of Light and Shadow around February last year. So for the next 3 months or 2 months, I was looking for what to read. I started Realm of the Elderlands, and though the first book gave me something close to Words of Light and Shadow, but the other books not so much. So
Oh,
Oh no, we've lost him again.
All right. All right. So he'll be back. But for now, I think we can proceed, right?
Yeah.
with the things. Okay, so we've all introduced ourselves and how we found the book. For now, I would like everyone to try kind of give a short review of the book itself and their rating of it. Who wants to go first, or should I go first?
Go first.
You're the man.
All right. To me, like as the series itself, as we see in the title of the series, this book to me was a revelation for what modern fantasies could actually achieve. I think it's something I kind of brushed on my overall thoughts on the final book, but I'll still, it's something that was always there right from the start, so I'm going to still say it. I think what this book does best is how it actually uh, combines the metaphysical as well as the physical. Like, what do I mean by the physical? Like, we humans, like their emotions, their relations, right? Then you go to the aspect of the metaphysical, which is we're talking about things like godhood, god machines, sense of like um, the creationism of the world, ontology, all these, the way it mixes it, was so masterful, and it does this so well. Usually, when you read fantasies that emphasize the um, high fantasy, you kind of lose that intimacy between, uh, within the character work, like the intimacy you have as between the reader and the story itself, and also like the character. But this one especially, it goes all the way, like Mark Frederick, Dorilian, right from the first book. But even beyond that, like regardless of my overall feelings towards someone like Stephen, we see the seeds here, like they were well written all the way, as well as other characters like Emily. They obviously the this book specifically kinds of does the best with two specific characters, but like even secondary characters like Sepod, Labran, no matter how short-lived they were, you understand, like their little cameos, they were actually wonderful. So for me, yeah, um, uh, besides that, again, I also like I have the foresight of the rest of the series. I appreciate in a way how this book specifically is kind of a microcosm of the whole um, bigger narrative of Triempery Revelations, from just like the primary conflicts, down to more secondary and other conflicts, like the ones we have like between the races, and the bigger conflicts, you understand, when you zoom out, with the Namor and the Diadem and the Leo and the Rail and Wall. So, and notwithstanding, it's a perfect 5 stars for me. Who wants to go next?
I'll go. You can read my written reviews of all the series on Goodreads. So that's where I really composed my slot and put it down. What impressed me was the different and the deftness with which the layers were handled. The author does not hold your hand. She does not explain anything. You learn about the world through the character's eyes. And I love books that carry character conflict on top of political conflict, on top of metaphysical conflict, and the whole concept of time being simultaneous. That's bringing in the physics, that's bringing in, and very few books have the courage to tackle that all in one volume. And the way she unwinds it is extremely well done. So it was exactly my kind of book. I like maverick, angry characters, and this teen character that you begin with or start as a child and you see him grow and change. I really dislike books where the characters do not get impacted by the events that they go through. And when it is the real mark of a solid author when you see characters grow and change their opinions because of their interactions. So there's an awful lot to love. I really enjoyed the interplay between Mark Frederick and Dorilian, and how Mark Frederick, with his extreme political acumen and experience, was able to mentor this very difficult person and bring him around to seeing all the people around him in a different light. It also had one of the most terrifying bad guys I've ever seen in fiction. That guy gave me nightmares. It was very well done.
I agree with that.
It was
I
horrifying.
don't rate books, so you're not going to get a star rating out of me because that's too subjective. I'm sorry, but what describes a book the best is the review and what the person felt reading it. A star tells me nothing. So I've stopped doing that.
When I heard that this series involved a lot of politics, I was really skeptical because the political angle of things typically loses my interest fairly easily. But when I met Dorilian, he reminded me in some ways of some of the students I've taught, because during most of my teaching career, I worked with with students who were between 13 and 17 years old. And there were times when I craved that mentor type of relationship with some of these students, thinking to myself, if you would just give me a chance, I could help you see life is a lot easier and or can be easier than what you're making it, and you're deliberately making your life harder, and if you would just listen to me, it wouldn't be so hard. But I think that's why I respect Mark Frederick so much. uh, One of the best written characters I think I've ever come across, as a politician, as a father figure, as an actual father, and just on many different levels, he succeeded as a character. And I identified personally with him a lot, while at the same time identifying with that rebellious teenager that Dorilian was, and that he was during a large part of this first book. We see him as a child, and then we see him. Uh, a lot of the struggles he went through were as a young teenager, and so I identified that as well. I don't talk about a lot of these things very well out loud because everything to me is inside. Coming out in the form of short poetry. So I have a difficult time articulating a lot of this.
I think you did a great
You
job.
did well, actually.
Yeah, you did a good
a
job.
great job, like I said. Yeah. Okay, so who wants to go next now?
I can
I
go
can go.
next.
Oh, you want to go?
All
Sure,
right.
yeah. I gave it a 7.5. Yet again, I liked everything about the book. It's also I don't
That's a
have
travesty,
a
by
lot
the way.
to say.
That's a travesty, by the way.
Yeah, we talked about that a lot. Yeah, you really did like
Go on.
you
Just go
really
on.
did like that.
Uh,
Um, I liked everything about the book for the most part. I already said what blew me away, the politics and the political intrigue. Um, I still didn't really rate it higher because yet again, it's just a book one for me. I already told you my like preference. I kind of like to really, I guess, feel the ball already rolling. Like I do like being sort of dropped just straight into like just an ongoing universe, like no introduction. We kind of like figure it out
uh,
along the way. But I guess for me, if I like had to like sort of give it a review or like talk about one thing specifically that wasn't the politics, I do like sort of the brotherly bonds that go on in the book. I might be like jumping ahead there because we were going to talk about themes later, but I really do like the brotherly bonds that go in the book because I have multiple brothers that I'm very close with, and it just really like hit home for me. Just sort of the care that goes on
uh,
between them, and
I'm going to interject a bit. Like, when you talk about brotherly bonds, do you mean between Leviathan and Dorilian, or overall, even with Stephen and John Turn?
yeah, mainly between mainly between Stefan. Yeah, I mean, oh no, I made notes. I'm not trying to like jump ahead. Sorry.
They said, does the point five?
Like I'm trying not to get to a point where I start like whenever you get like further into it, I'm just like repeating what I said earlier, and I like already sort of like jumping ahead. So we can skip to Alex. I was like already jumping ahead.
All right. From the
Okay, you guys are sort of like missing a context here. We discussed the book last week, I think, after it finished, and he had some issues with it. So, like, one of the issues was like he couldn't kind of suspend his disbelief about,
Oh, you
was
mean
it an
whenever it
8 year
said
old? Yeah, yeah. Was it about an eight?
Julie
Was
was a
it, I
Gary
think?
Sue? Yeah, one of the
Yeah,
when she
yeah,
was a
that
Gary Sue.
Dorilian, I think Dorilian was 7 or 8 at the time when he did that emergency C-section on his
Oh
dead
yeah,
mom to the,
yeah. We had a whole like talk
yeah,
about like
yeah, so
battlefield
like, yeah,
C-section.
that's,
But
yeah,
I didn't
yeah,
know
that's the
anything about
context.
C-section, so I thought like a C-section was like this like insane procedure, and I was like, bro, how did he do this in like 5 seconds that fast?
On
And
serious.
then everybody
Anyways,
was like arguing with me, and then I was like, oh, it's actually not that hard to just do a C-section. And I was like, okay, well,
all right. So, okay, sorry for interrupting you. You can.
It's all right. But Sordaneon, I think for me, the big thing going in, I remember actually, I was a little bit like you, Profe Steve. I was a little skeptical because of the politics. And it's not that I dislike books with politics, it's that I have a high bar for it. And I went in and I'm like, okay, this is a political fantasy. Let's see how
Um,
it goes.
um, a second. We're going to come back to that high bar when you're done explaining yourself. Well, let's go.
Sorry, say it again.
You hear? I said like we are going to come back to the comments about high bar, but just continue.
Okay.
Your high bar for political fantasies.
And I remember as I read it, seeing the relationship between Dor and his, I'd say at first he had more shallow connections. I think that's a fair thing to say because he didn't want to be near anybody. He latched on to those connections that he did have and with, say, Leviathan for dear life. And I remember just the visceral feeling. I think it made his character so. I think, like Janny said, he's very passionate. And when Dorilian does something, when he has a connection or a relationship with a character, you feel the emotion in it. That either he doesn't want to connect or he cherishes this connection with a burning passion. And
Yes.
I found that at the heart of everything to be just so stunning. And alongside with what you said, Profe Steve, his relationship to Mark Frederick and Mark Frederick's insistence of being that mentor figure, continuously pushing and not quite pushing. Because some people could make the argument that he was being pushy, but I don't really. He was being
No,
patient and
yeah. Ah,
open.
yeah, no, it works. Even pushing, like you already said, that Dorilian is so passionate for like if like he's just like always like extreme with his things. His
Yeah.
stubbornness and everything is extreme. So like if you actually want to do something with him, like you have to actually push. So like that's okay. It's okay that yeah, Matt kind of pushed him, pulled, push and pull, and fortunately delivered one of the most beautiful like relationships like I've read in anything by the end. So yeah, you can continue, or like, are you done?
I do have a little more, but the just that relationship and the way especially Mark Frederick and Dor was handled from beginning to end, how it began and how it went on throughout the story and what it meant for the greater story. I think one of the most impeccable things that L.L. Stevens did was every little moment mattered. Every single thing that happens within this book, you see repercussions not just in later books, but in this book. You think of the first chapter, you think of the second chapter, you think of the third chapter. Everything matters to Dorillion. Everything matters to the characters, and it made a difference. I absolutely love when an author manages to have every little moment and scene. I think it does show the amount of care put into the craft and how much time was spent just tweaking and tinkering away at this story. It was just so impeccable. And I mean, I remember I was talking to L.L. Stevens herself about a scene that she wrote, and just I vividly remember the raw emotion because it was about, I'm not going to spoil anything, a parent-child relationship and how she had written it when she thought her son had died at 9/11. And I felt like while reading that scene, I could feel a little bit of that pain, that anguish. And she does such a brilliant job of that in general. Oh,
Not only that, she took a character that was extremely difficult and in a difficult position. This guy was a projected empath.
that's true.
And he had all of his family murdered. He had every faction in the world manipulating, lying, trying to use him, and he could see through all of it. So he had barriers that were just miles high. So his relationship with his brother and with his grandfather was straightforward and clean. So when he trusted them, he trusted them. But those other people around him that played false and showed a false face. So the barriers that were laid around his personality and Mark Frederick being able to see them and perceive them and realize that this was a child that had no father figure whatsoever. His father was execrable, horrible. There was no place for this kid to turn aside from the very slender thread of a few relationships that had never betrayed him. And the way that L.L. Stevens presented this character and presented his passionate stance when he believed the entire world was against him and when most of the world actually was against him. Brilliant job. Pulled off a massively accomplished piece of writing in this book, and I fell in love with that. Who can't? Who wouldn't?
No, right? It's beautiful.
I mean, every teen in the world grows up being displaced like all the world is against them, but in this case, it was absolutely true.
Yes. If
So
I
for this
had,
character to be hateful and be vindictive and lash out was entirely understandable.
I really wish I had read this book and this dynamic that Dorillion was growing up with before I became a teacher, because I saw Dorillion in so many of the kids that I had in class. Of course, I had the kids from solid homes, supportive homes, loving homes, but I also had a lot of those kids that grew up being betrayed and being forgotten and being left out, even in their what should have been their most intimate relationships with their parents. And I saw how much effort it took as a teacher to try to let them know that not every adult in their life was going to do that and be that way and betray them and use them or and whatever like that, and just trying to build just a grain of trust a little bit at a time. And so I really, like I said, I really wish I had found that book many years ago.
Okay,
It
so
would
I
have
had
changed your
some
life. Is that what you're
troubles
saying? It
on
would have
my.
changed your
I
outlook.
think, and it also I think would have sped up my process of being able to be empathetic toward the kids, being able to spot the kids that needed that needed a little bit of extra understanding, that needed a little bit of extra reassurance, because I struggled with that for the first 8 or 10 years that I was a teacher, until I finally got that some kids come to school to learn, some kids come to school to be loved. And if they don't get that first, reaching them with academics is not going to work.
I had a little bit of that
Uh,
when I was teaching outdoors to summer campers who came from difficult backgrounds, and they were filled with so much rage and so much anger against the world. You can't do it in an academic background. I took them out in the woods and got them dirty. We ran through swamps. We went through streams, until everybody was just covered with mud. Just bring them all down to that primeval level, and it loosens things up. And then trying to find that angle of interest. And I really love in this book how L.L. Stevens used horses as a bridge through Jonathan,
hmm,
Mm-hmm.
because
I agree
horses
with
are
that.
empaths. You can't be angry around them. You've got to be open with them because they will read your mood a mile away. And if you're going there wanting to give them a difficult day, they will give you a 10 times difficult day right back. So the fact that that was a vulnerability point in Duralian's character, when he was around the horses, some of those barriers had to let down because of the nature of the animals.
I did not
and,
notice that. I mean, I guess it might just be because I don't have much background with horses, but I think that's such a beautiful insight. That's so interesting and wonderful. And you point it out, and it's so very clear when you think back on it. And I love that so much.
You're not going to push around 1,000 pounds of animal. And if you're in a bad
uh,
mood, they're going to be in 10 times as bad a mood. So that was just a perfect setting to
yeah,
begin the process
yeah.
of having this
In
character unwind.
in general, I think maybe L. Stephens has a love for horses. I have to say that. Uh, what's the name of the horse? Amina's horse.
Cyril.
Amina. Okay, that's Surah.
Oh,
What
that horse.
about the
Yeah. Okay.
one that?
Oh, it began with an
Okay,
F,
the,
and I can't
Amina
remember.
Sarafa? Are you talking about the
No,
book?
he's talking about the original horse that belonged to Aminus.
Oh,
Oh.
oh. I don't remember.
uh,
See if I
all
can
It
right,
find
we'll
began with
come
an
back to
F.
it later. Yeah. So, anyways, all what you guys have said
She didn't put it in
kind
the
of
glossary.
Oh,
illuminating in some ways, and yeah. So, but for now, let's kind of take the discussion forward. Um, I kind of asked for a short review, right? And in a way, I think everyone ended up like, because the next agenda was, I was saying, okay, maybe we discuss like what the whole story in this book is so far, like from start to end. Um, like your favorite aspects, your favorite scenes or moments in the story, maybe your least favorite, like the most emotional moments for you, like things like that.
I can do my favorite
Um,
scene. That's
all
very
right,
easy for me.
all right.
So you want to do favorite scenes?
Yeah, you can, but like, okay, you wanna go first, or
It's up to you, man. You want to do favorite scenes? We do what you want to do.
no?
Uh
It's
oh.
not about what I want to do, Like, yeah, it's like a discussion for with everyone now. So like, generally, like, I, if I were to ask you like what's your summary like of this story, because I don't want to get into the themes currently. I want to leave the themes for later. Eh, uh, and I think I don't even know, like we will have to actually just talk about the story and themes together. So let's just go with the favorite scenes. For me, if I were to choose just a single moment to serve as my favorite, and I think I already kind of talked about it earlier, it will have to be like, I know like this is all spoilers. We are going to spoil whatever. So like it was the ensuing chapters after Jonathan's death,
Yep.
and yeah, the heart to heart, both Mark Frederick and Dorilian has. Like we know these high bonds and the way the will I say the magic or the perceptions or like the very like how they perceive the world itself, how like their emotions and their thoughts influences the world and the kinds of trauma Dorilian himself had experienced like ever since we were introduced to him like with the death of his mom. Then later on, okay, the loss of Sebald and all the cages is kind of built due to this. Um, Obviously, he has his own prejudices he has against on like unjust prejudices like against people like a war race. The message is like you essentially I think the message is you need to kind of face a thing and make your own opinion of that thing as opposed to going by any image you have of them from a distance, be it from what you heard or from experiences you have no single face for. Okay, like Sebald was killed. What came to his mind? Killed did it. Um, his mom, like they used that. What's the name of the poison? Is it Mirith or something?
Yeah,
Like
Marith.
okay, this yeah, Mirith, like the seven houses, and so like he had all of those things. But what kind of made that scene for me, the moment he's heart to heart with Mark Frederick was the fact that both of them were kind of so raw. Like he accessed him, like I don't what's the word for it? Like I think there's a word for it in the series. The bond they had, like the linking of their minds. Like when he like without the walls and everything, like they were both essentially naked. You know, they exposed all their secrets to each other, like nothing hidden from any other person. Their thoughts on the world, their thoughts on one another, their thoughts on every minor thing, you understand? And he saw just how pure Mark Frederick was and his likes, his needs, his fears. And also the struggle to actually like, if there's a person that's well adjusted and he's grown into himself like in the whole series, like someone that knows himself so well. If you are going to choose a single person, I think you are going to go with Mark Frederick. But for that kind of person to become so distraught and so kind of, he was kind of destroyed at the point, like, so the scene was just over. I don't know how to like actually put it into words, but the whole scene with the exchanges they had between them, with the back and forth, the push and pull, dog pushes like Mark Frederick pushes him away, like dog pulls, and at the end of the day, like he said his mind, said harsh things, and but at the end of the day, they kind of ended up through that mental battle, knew much more of each other and came to bond stronger than like any other bond they've had their whole lives. That was like the moment for me in the whole book for me. That's my favorite moment.
I don't have a favorite moment, but that certainly is the pivotal moment, short of the ending moment. And what really blew my mind about that was Durillian's tendency not to be able to account for other people's inability to read his intentions. Because he was an empath, he could read their intentions, but his inability to
Yes,
see both ways that they could read him or not read him because he didn't know how to communicate. And at that moment when Jonathan died, and Durillion was indirectly responsible because of Chiral, the gift of the horse that was so mean, and they were warning him
yes,
all through the book that he was going to kill somebody. The
yes,
fact that Mark Frederick's victory came at the cost of losing everything, all of his planning for the future, all of his succession, everything he put into his son, all of the building toward a future that he was trying to achieve, he had to lose all of that to reach Durillion. And the fact that he managed to recover, Mark Frederick managed to recover his footing and not lose sight of the end goal, even through all that grief, even though he had his moments where he was shielded and he curled up inside himself, his first reaction still was to protect Durillion and send his guard after him to bring him in so that nobody would blame him.
correct.
So the immensity of his character being able to lose everything and then accept the victory amid the shards of his life was a very impressive piece of writing. That will stick with me forever. Certain books, certain scenes you will never forget.
Yeah,
No, I
it's
agree.
it definitely sticks with me forever. Like it's so vivid for me, and that's another point. But I'm not well equipped to actually uh, uh, put it into words. How wonderful our prose is in painting these pictures of the scenes and passing the messages and like everything she needs the reader to get at the moment. Like superb. So who wants to say theirs next?
I can go next. I should
All
write down a
right.
quote for this. It was the scene where Mark and Dillian they had their public duel, and the quote that I marked out was it says, "If we cannot talk, then we will vie mightily, one way or another. I must become more than the bloodless construct in his mind, flesh and bone, not some vague outline. Only challenges will change his definitions." This stood out to me, and me and Chidi had talked about it. It's the first day you couldn't be here, but it was sort of like, you can't reason with a teenager out of sort of their way of thinking by just kind of sort of just speaking words to them. Kind of the only way to sort of change in abstraction is to sort of go through a lived experience. And I think this really shows just how smart Mark is, because he said, if I can't get through him with words, how about I have him experience something physical, something sort of intimate. Battle is between two people, one on one. It sort of allows you to see into the mind of each other.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the first time I read this, I completely like misunderstood the scene, and talking with Chidi really like opened up my eyes to just how good of a scene this was.
Oh,
That's
okay,
how
okay. The first time your mind was just this guy's a garage too.
yeah, I mean, I really didn't understand it. I was like, okay, well, he just dueled his teenager in public and then got schooled, and now he just looks like a loser.
Yeah, but like I think this kind of is part of what eventually became the scene we had after Jonathan's death, right? Like he chipped at Dorian slowly, slowly, slowly. But yeah, this scene
Yeah,
particularly like also kind of stands out. But like I'm just trying to say, okay,
yeah.
these
And
were
once it
just
started
some
getting
parts.
just
Yeah,
about to
yeah,
go
these
downhill.
are these are the seeds of like what came by later with like what he was building up to with achieving with
Mhm.
Dorilian. Unfortunately,
Yeah,
it took what hurts, as Jenny Watts said earlier, is the fact that it actually took Mark Frederick losing everything to and to manage, like eventually manage it. It's it's beautiful and at the same time very devastating for me, even as a reader. Well, like that's part of this kind of duality of things. The way she does it is part of what I love the most about the series itself. Um, Things come at like not to spoil things, and but like even people that are kind of um up to date with the current book, the character conclusions. You understand? You lose and you gain. You lose and you gain. There's always this balancing of things. You lose the most and you gain the most. Your greatest fear is like, and actually, I'm just kind of realizing this now. But yeah, that was Mark's greatest fear, like losing what he's been building up to for so much years, and something like that happens in its own way by the end. Not to spoil, I'm just going to leave it there, but I'm sure others here get what I'm saying. Okay, so Alex, you want to talk about your favorite scene?
Oh, mine was the heart to heart between Mark Frederick and Derillian.
All right. Okay, but you can still maybe we skipped like there are aspects to it we didn't kind of illuminate on.
I mean, I don't really have much more to add, but I can go with a different scene. The ending sequence.
Never been
the
so happy to see a character
All
lose their
right,
hand.
that's fine.
Yes.
Okay, what Prof?
Screw you, to Ben the Fourth. Goodbye.
Some scenes are just absolute poetic justice.
yeah.
Uh, no, yeah, that moment, I was
I kind of missed it. What did you say?
I said goodbye to Ben the Fourth because Durillian's
Oh,
father.
The lizard's on the lawn. Come on, you have to
like
enjoy this.
no, 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 like yeah,
Oh my god.
yeah.
But I
But
mean,
that was also another that was another of TY's issues. He had an issue with the way Deben went out, right? TY, you
You
want to
said what?
elaborate?
You said what? You said
I
again?
said you had some issues with how Deben went out.
you did? Okay. Hold on, I don't hear this.
You mean whenever he just like just falls to his death?
Yeah.
I didn't have an issue. I just found it really funny. Like, okay, look, I know that sounds fucked up, but it's just like the way it happens, like him just walking in, then just next thing you know, he's just like running, and then he just falls to his death. Like, bro, look, I sound fucked up, but like my fault. Like it was just funny to read in a moment. Like I felt bad
You
it
know
just
what? I
reading the
think
moment.
It's to Ben though. I
I
can't.
think you miss. Yeah, you misheard us. I think he thought we were talking about Daimonaris.
Yeah,
Oh.
Daemonaris.
Oh, I hate her.
It's the one never
I,
been so happy to see a character lose their head. I
Oh,
wasn't
all
talking
right.
about Debin.
I thought you were talking about
Oh
the
yeah.
Ben. My bad.
No,
Yeah, I thought you were too.
No,
Oh,
no. Okay,
that
yeah, no,
one.
no.
that's fair.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
And the
like,
brothers left holding the bag,
Uh-oh.
literally.
like we were talking about that one, the whole like C-section thing. That was
Oh, yeah.
that was just that was
Yeah.
just my
So,
bad. I had like no clue how C-sections worked. I was
Cut
I was
out.
so
Oh,
confused.
come on.
God, I was so confused.
okay. So, Prof, do you want to say your favorite scene?
I have a really hard time narrowing things down to favorite scenes, just because my mind is trying to grasp the overall picture. But I would say the sequence of small events and big events that happened, because somewhere early on, and I cannot remember when it was, but I believe it was Mark Frederick
I can hear
said
people now.
something about what Derillian was going to have to
I think
do
that should be right.
was learn how to be human. Okay, well now later on that was going to change, but at the first he had a good grasp on what it was to be Godborn, to be this expansive, magical creature who could do so much more and understand so much more than everybody else. But if he was going to ever have a successful life, even as a leader of his own nation, he had to learn how to be human. And Mark Frederick understood that he was going to be the key to this bigger plan that we weren't really privy to in book one yet. But if he didn't learn what it was like for the quote little people, the ordinary, the farmers, the blacksmiths, the laborers, and learn what it was like from their perspective, he was never going to be successful as the leader because nobody would ever relate to him. And then he didn't, of course, Derillian didn't necessarily want to know how to be human, but all the events that happened in his life sort of forced that on him. He had to learn empathy. He had to learn to not only manipulate people's feelings and emotions, but to actually appreciate what it was like to see the world from their perspective. And so, not necessarily one scene, but any scene that led him further down that road, which the whole scene with Jonathan and the horse, and how Derillian tried baby steps to try to develop a relationship with Jonathan, and then all of a sudden lost that and had to deal with the loss himself, but also had to help Mark Frederick deal with the loss. And it was, I don't know, it just blew me away.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. And,
Uh,
and none of those were throwaway scenes. Everything that we saw, every event stayed relevant all the way through the real Lord.
yes, yes, yes. I think I kind of commented about not to spoil. I don't want to spoil. Let me just leave it. You know, Ty here is just in book two, so let me just leave it as
Yeah.
it. All right. Okay. So let's let's go into characters. And the characters and their acts and as well as dynamics. By far, we know like this book you could say is the book of Mark Frederick in a way, but like regardless, I think if you want to look at it from like if you want to kind of look at it technically, just take things the way they are. Like it's actually Dorilian's book, right? Because everything kind of ties back to him. And I think um you see like Sebod, Labran, Deben, Damonaris, Namo, um Mark Frederick, Stephen, even Emily to some degrees, you understand. Then you go to the lesser guys like Teflon, Legon. All of them are kind of built around like to a certain degree, their stories kind of revolves around Dorilian.
Can't leave
Um,
out Indalaran.
so
You can't leave
what?
out Indalaran.
Ah, that pervert. Yeah, I don't like I had forgotten about him totally actually. But yeah, even him, but I don't know where to fit him in. But basically, for me, the dynamics, you know, there's this it's hard to just discuss them without the themes. But okay, so let's go with how these dynamics work with both Dorilian and how it goes into the theme of perceptions, right? For Dorilian, he's someone who was born into these species of will I say half demigods, or you understand, like he was born into it. He was groomed by his relatives, specifically Sebod, especially to believe in that superiority, like that superiority above the normal, like being beyond a normal human being. Um, then you go Deben with his own complexes too. This one, his influence. You go, when you account for this guy's influence on Dorilian himself, both directly and indirectly, such a abusive dynamic, kind of driven by his fear of what happened to Labran. Then you go to Stephen as well as Emily, which are kind of like our representatives of the Celt, right? The in the hierarchy of this world, um, apart from the dogmen, I think the Celts are at the bottom of the food chain, right? So you see, they have their reservations. They have this view of the high bonds, specifically the Sordaneons. These guys, they aren't humans. They are like when they try dehumanizing them, you know, what goes to them next is to demonize these entities. They say, okay, these guys are monsters, baby man-eating monsters. Um, while on the sides of the Sudanese, they kind of Sebot, he dehumanizes himself as along with the high bonds like the descendants of Dalon, right? But in his own case, when he dehumanizes it, he kind of go into this elevation outlook, kind of what word will I use here? Maybe position themselves as angelic, right? Angelic or kind of deity like as gods. Um, you go to then you have the Namor. In his own case, I don't even know. He's kind of like in the middle, in between the two. When it suits him, He acknowledges this godhood the Sordaneans has. When it doesn't, like when it suits him better, he kind of leans towards the looks of the Kells, like demonize them and stuff. So essentially, what I'm just trying to get at is it makes sense why the book is kind of written for this character, and it makes it even much more impressive to me how someone like Mark Frederick, like he comes, everybody is saying, like everybody goes, I demonize, like I dehumanize Dorilian, you understand? A monster, dehumanize him, a god, or the son of a god. But he looks at this and he says, no, what this person needs, what this person needs is to be human, and kinds of walks towards it throughout the series, trying to try to has his attempts like after the death of Sebod, kinds of use that opportunity when Dorilian kinds of lash out and attacks what's the name of that Skeld town? Uh, Amala, right? Hello?
The Keld what?
When he attacked the town, the one with the aqueduct.
Oh, Gignasta.
Was it?
The
Yeah,
one.
yeah. Like he attacks it. Yeah, he attacks it, and this guy seizes the opportunity. He sets up such a brilliant political mind, man. Like he sets it up. He went. He met what was his name? Rega, right? Pleaded with him, set it up, and kind of brought Dorilian into his own coven, like into his home. And unfortunately, things didn't go as he would have planned, like how, like the best it could have went. The best it could have went was okay as he brought him to what's the name of the manor again? His own manor. I've forgotten, but like the manor, the McFerry's manor. When he brought him there, the best outcome would have been that 6 months or between 6 months or 1 year. I'm not sure about the timeline. Like that 6 month to 1 year stay
It was
should have
Gustan
been
was the
what.
name of the manor. Gustan.
Yeah,
Oh,
Gustan.
Took me a
Yeah,
while to
yeah,
remember
Gustan.
it.
Yeah, Gustan. So that 6 months to 1 year stay was the perfect opportunity to actually set everything into motion, get Dorilian close to um Jonathan, get Dorilian close to um Stephen, Emily, the younger one, Hans Durin, get Dorilian to know the Kells around Mark Frederick, gets him to know also the Stolbans, right? And the unfortunately, he tried that. These are prejudices or built of false perceptions, intergenerational false perceptions everyone has had, like and experiences. Emily immediately, what did she do? She
She
took
left.
Hans Durin and,
She left.
Stephen and left, and she left. Um, how this guy Johnson, what's the name of his betrothed? Uh, Ionas, right? Was there kind of also sowing our own seeds, but like at the end of the day, at least I think before Jonathan's death, Mark Frederick succeeded more with Jonathan, like, or I would say, or should I say, Jonathan succeeded more with Dorilian than Mark Frederick kind of even managed. But unfortunately, a twist of like the irony of it, like his favorite hobby, what he's kind of like the scene before it even happened. Actually, the moment Dorilla gifted him that horse, I knew it was going to come, but like we ended up losing Jonathan. and frankly, it will have looked as if all hope is lost, even to Mark Frederick. Like there wasn't any way to bridge this thing with Dorilian anymore. But regardless, the bigger concern at hand right now is like he has his own grief to deal with. Man, God, this man is such an impressive individual. He has his own grief to deal with, but regardless, I think someone made this comment earlier. He kind of saw this thread line when Dorilian kind of came to reach out, you understand, and he still grasped to it, and this lifeline he held to it till the end. So for me, yeah. Then we have that's Dorilian and Mark Frederick. Does anyone wants to kind of
There was a
talk
huge
about
pivotal moment before
any
that
aspect?
that made the scene where
Yeah.
Mark Frederick had to pick up the pieces and the pivotal moment of Jonathan's death inevitable. And that was Sabord. Sabord had charge of Dorilian. Sabord had Dorilian's trust. He was the mentor. He was the master chess player.
Oh,
He died before his
yeah,
job was finished. And what I saw
yeah.
was when Dorelian lost him, he was untethered, he was ungrounded. Suddenly he was left on his own to make all the decisions, and he was unprepared because Sabord well knew that Nimor was looking to racially cleanse the Staban race and bring it back to a racially pure. And that was his entire modus operandi. He wanted to take over Sordaneon, take over sort of, in order to make his racial vision of the future. And then don't forget Caroline. She was evil. She was the head of the snake in the grass that was using everything that the real provided to get rich and become more and more corrupt. And she was the moving piece behind just about every bad thing that ever happened to Dorilian. And Mark Frederick knew it. Don't tell me Sabor didn't know it.
Yeah.
He absolutely did. But he was introducing Dorilian to what he was capable of handling one level at a time. And he died before his work was finished. And that's where Mark Frederick had to step in, because Sabord's job as the mentor to bring up this difficult, politically important, chosen one, as it were, and shape him to handle the future that
Yeah.
was inevitably coming with two major enemies that are both evil snakes in the grass. He died before he could finish that training. And that was the singular tragedy that launched all the rest of the book. And I think in a way it was overlooked. Because if you look at that, Sabord was the centerpin. He was the grandfather who raised this kid after his mother died. He was the one who moved in and protected the
Yeah.
inheritance and made sure that Dorilian had a sheltered upbringing from all of the forces that were moving against him. To lose that person out of his life set him adrift.
Yeah, yeah, but I think there's also the other angle to it. I think
Really quickly.
if Sebald was around, oh, okay, okay.
Sorry,
So,
I
w-
I didn't mean to do this, but my brothers really need me to help them out with something. I have to
okay,
bounce.
okay,
I'm
you
so
can.
sorry. And then
No
of
problem,
course
no
all my
problem.
stuff just died. I did not. I thought I'd charged it properly, but I think one of the chargers didn't work. I'm so sorry to all of you.
Okay,
Thank you so much,
no
Sayuri,
problem, no problem.
Janny,
Yeah.
Profe Steve,
Aleks,
Kai.
Bye,
See you later.
been a
bye,
privilege.
bye,
It's
Alex.
been a privilege to meet and talk to you too. It's an honor to hear you speak, and every time you give so much insight. It's really wonderful. And I'm so sorry. I'm a bit of a mess today, but again, thank you all so much. I appreciate it. Now I gotta bounce.
All right. Okay, see you another time.
See you, man.
All right. Well, where was? Yeah, where was I? Yeah. Okay, I was like, there's kind of like the flip positive side to the because I think without like if Sebald was still in Dorilian's life, we wouldn't have like Dorilian couldn't have grown into the person he was. I don't think Mark Frederick would have been able to get closer. And frankly, regard frankly, Sebald himself, the kind of thoughts he has, the kinds of views he has about the Sordaneons themselves and their positions in the world, to me, is too rigid. You know, I think one aspect to Dorilian is the fact that he's kind of well, I not catalyst. He's kind of you know, the world, there's an established structure to the world. We have the kells, we have the function of the real as it is, you know, the non-real nodes, the seven houses, the Stubbans, the Sordanians. Everybody is kind of like even Mark Frederick, he's the king of the um I think it's the Triempery, right? Yeah, the king of the Triempery. So like everybody is kind of rigid, set into the way of the established structure, and regardless of the ideas, uh, apart from Mark Frederick and later we learn with them Hans Durin, and also, you know, even if I want to say Dorilian himself, it's kind of something that was passed to him by Mark Frederick too. You know, the fact that the world, the way it is currently, we don't, it needs to change. And as we want to change it, it doesn't need to change back to what it was or what it could like, what it could be if one single person was there. Um, Sebod, what does Sebod wants to do? You could say he wants to take it to a stage of okay, when it's just the Sudans ruling without any chains, no, nothing hanging on them. You understand? That's his own vision. Uh, the change Namor wants to bring was Namor's view. His own is just okay. He wants to return to the glory days, that fascist kind of state mindset, you understand, the glory days where the stubborn kind ruled and every other race, you know, are just slaves and animals. Um, then you go, what does Stephen, what does he think, you know? Even here, we know what he becomes later, but like even here, we can see the seeds of it. What is Stephen's idea? Stephen's idea is okay, let's change the drivers, let's change the pilots of this current world. And we put ourselves there as the pilots and then keep operating in this same structure. You understand? So essentially, what I'm just trying to say is Sebald needed to go. If not, like we couldn't have had um, Dorilian thinking of a way forward that's kind of out of this current paradigm the world operates on. Okay, what's the next stage? Is it opening new nodes? Is it okay letting Kells have their own nodes and kind of operating their nodes by themselves? Is it okay removing the system of the seven houses with the slots and everything? So that's just what I wanted to say. I kind of rambled about, but yeah. Hello?
I don't think we know the future of what would have been if Sabord had not died. because Mark Frederick and Sabor in many ways understood each other. They were both master chess players. They both had a respect for each other. And even though they didn't see eye to eye about everything, they did have respect for
Yeah.
each other's views. So to me, that future is unwritten. And the tragedy
Okay.
was that
Yeah,
it stayed
that's a
unwritten.
good point. That's true. But in a way, I think we still had them with Dorilian and Hans. In a way, you could say Dorilian, his both are in that dynamic. He's Sebot, and you could say, oh, okay, maybe it's kind of Swiss, because Hans himself was naive. So Hans can't be the Mark Frederick here, though he has his own awareness and um, original thoughts that are even better than whatever I think Dorian thinks, as we know. We've read it till the end, we know the way it goes, you understand? So not to spoil, that's just what I'm trying to say. Prof,
I'm not sure
yeah,
what
do
my
you have
thoughts
anything to
are along that line. I know that it seemed like for the most of this first book, everyone's goal was to quote fix the problems, get rid of the bad guys, and go back to the way things always were. And gradually, little by little, we find out that that's not what Mark Frederick had in mind. Even when things were seemingly going well for him, Mark Frederick saw all of the cancers that were growing underneath the foreign enemy, the seven houses, even the priests themselves who administered the rill. He saw that those things were going to continue eating away at their society, and that it couldn't go back. It couldn't continue. There was going to have to be something more happen here than what anybody else thought, and that's where the chess playing comes into it. He had a different ending
yeah,
in mind all along, and it was going to be a matter of convincing other people or bringing other people to see it for themselves. I don't think that even if Mark Frederick had lived longer, I don't think he would have ever been able to tell Dorillian or Honduran or anyone else, look,
yeah,
we've got to go here. He had to get situations to where they could see it for themselves.
They both had the same goal, though,
Yes.
was for Derillian to step up. They both had the same goal, and both of them saw that as the one piece that would topple all the chessboard pieces
Hmm.
off the board. It would sweep away the past.
I'm sorry, I'm a little bit distracted right now because Pico came in and he's 45 minutes.
That's
he
the barn cat that
he's he gets fed at 5 o'clock, and he always comes in somewhere between 3:45 and 4:15, demanding it now. He's
all
being
right.
patient at the
So,
moment.
yeah, okay. So, then let's talk about Stephen. What are your views on Stephen currently, like within Sordaneon?
once an
I think,
asshole, always an asshole.
yeah.
Everybody around him tried to grow him up, and he would not grow up. There you go.
To me, Stefan was always tragic. He had so much potential because he had the education, he had the bloodlines, he had the uh, opportunities to be a whole lot more than what he was, and yet. Uh, I think I mentioned this in a few discussions on threads now and then that he never seemed to grow out of that early adolescent mindset of going immediately to the wildest possible course of action. And everything, of course, then blew up in his face because he wasn't thinking things through and he
Stefan
wasn't
was
taking.
definitely a martyr. He was an
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolute
yeah.
martyr from start to finish. He was constantly blaming all of the unfairnesses of the world on everybody else, and he was determined to fix them. And he was just like a freight train. All he saw was how to lay blame outside of what the actual situation was, and therefore he went through it all like a wrecking ball.
Mm-hmm.
Typical martyr. We are the victims. Now fix it and make it just. And he did anything but. So he was the epitome of the martyr to me.
And that's what made him vulnerable to being manipulated for later on things that happened in the story. Uh, because, yeah, he had that mindset.
Right from page one, I'm the victim. It's his fault. I was insulted. I had to behave the way I did. He was making excuses and not taking accountability for anything, and he did not change.
Yes. And that made me
Uh,
feel so sorry for Cullen because Cullen was a good friend. Cullen was as good a friend as anybody could have. He was the voice of reason. He was the one who tried to steer and inject a little bit of sanity into what was going on, and yet he was rejected at every turn. His counsel was rejected at every turn, and then he had to pick up the pieces of what was left and try to help him put it back together.
okay, I think for Stefan's case, I'll just have to kind of say he's unfortunate to be the example of the series of like what it looks like for someone to be unable to kind of break out or go out of the cage they've made for themselves to confront these perceptions or like monsters they've had in mind, be it monsters, be it angels or whatever, you know. He has this view, okay, all Kelts are angels, no Celt can do no bad, you understand? And he sticks to it. He doesn't, no matter what is thrust upon him, like when he blotted out um uh, I think he was kind of indirectly behind Sebas' death, or at least the seven houses used him in that sense, you understand? He couldn't even see that, like even there, with the way the kind of hurried and violent way they executed Sebas in cold blood, right? Then you go again, his views with his views about disturbance, his views about the Sordaneons, he just whatever he says, like I think it was at the end of book one, or possibly it could be at the start of book two. And I don't want to kind of spoil book two, but like there are blatant examples of or scenarios where you could actually see this surely is a seed, or this surely is something that at least should sort of shake this image you have, right? Should kind of undo a bit of this image you have. You see, like Dorilian, you invited him to your own coronation, and he comes. Like for him to come unguarded and stuff, that's something, that's a proof to you. Like to him to agree to even listen to your demands and to give you that support of his presence, that's sort of a proof in a way. But like he's so hell bent in kind of reinforcing his own preconceived notions about things, he doesn't even consider it. Like all his fears, all his hatreds, like they just kept on getting worse and worse as it went on, because what, he does nothing to curb them. He only acknowledges. He has that bias of only acknowledging things that kinds of reinforces them. So his fear of Dorilian got worse. His idolization or infantilization of Kel just got worse. Every other thing. And I think there's this comment. Someone made a comment about maybe that Mark Frederick sort of failed him in a way. And I could see the maybe a conversation being had about that, but to me, I don't think I'm going to agree at all. Um, in the context of the series, there are multiple times, even before the loss of Johnson, Mark Frederick draws him to his council, as his grandson. Like he draws him, he tries to help him out, but unfortunately, this stubborn-headedness of Stephen, as well as his mom not helping matters, because his mom kind of feeds into it too, for good reason. I think for her, she has bigger justifications, even like without knowing the details of the backstory then, but you could see the shades of what kind of happened to her in the past, right? So like for her, she at least has a stronger experience to beyond saying, okay, for Stefan, what was his biggest issue? His biggest thing he faced was, okay, Dorilian calling him a bastard or animal. For fuck's sake, like how does that compare to actually calling people monsters, man eaters, and you understand, like for you to actually believe these things. So to me, maybe he could have done a bit, but yeah, it's just unfortunate that it's Stefan is the character. Like it's hard to be someone. It's hard to be someone because these are themes actively discussed throughout the series. Like Dorilian started off, he was always a much more contemplative individual right from the first scene. So it's not kind of like it's kind of apples to oranges between him and Stephen. But regardless, he also started off with strong prejudices, which he himself, along with kind of the help of others, we can't emphasize it enough. But like Mark Frederick being the prime of it, you understand, did went a long way in undoing, and like he that process of learning and unlearning carries over throughout the series. It's something he continues doing till the end. I'm not going to claim he's perfect by the end, but at least he's a much better person. And frankly, Leviathan is a young guy. I'm not going to use him. Frankly, he's the most like well-adjusted and moral highborn by the end, in my own view.
I think Stefan' biggest weakness was his mother. His Emily protected him. She defended him. She justified his actions. She glossed over his accountability. She was always standing in between him and growing up, to the point where, as the series moves forward, Stefan claims that he's all for his culture because he was brought up among the Keld culture because of Emily removing him and protecting him within the Keld culture. But in the end, he rejected the culture. He did what it suited him. In the second book, he literally flew in the face of what the elders of his own culture were telling him. So to me, he was false to everything but what he chose to do. He stayed his headstrong way, and I saw Emily as being a large part of his inability to grow up. She never made him accountable for his
That's a
actions.
good point. And at the first of it, we kind of wondered if Durillion was going to be that way, if he was going to be the one that would be unable to change and unable to grow. And yet we found out that no, it's not Durillion that's not able to grow. It's Stefan. He's the one that he had his ideas in mind, and I saw this in so many students that I had when I would see them in middle school, and then see them again as juniors or seniors, and they had not grown one bit emotionally or in their relationships. And to me, that's a tragic. And usually they had a parent or some other parental figure that did that very thing. They did not allow them to suffer the consequences of what they were what of choices they were making, and so they did not have to grow up.
Mark Frederick never pulled Emily into line either. Frankly, I
No.
hated Emily. I really, really did, because she was so much of a part of all the weakness that ran
Mhm.
through this story and the next. And Mark Frederick never
Yeah,
took her to task either. He groomed Jonathan to take the responsibility, but he did not ever give Emily the same firm
yeah,
hand.
yeah, yeah. Mark Frederick is not perfect. Actually, he has his blind sides, and I agree.
I
It's
wonder
fairer
some.
to say it's fairer to say his failure is to Emily, as opposed to the example I was given earlier about someone saying he failed Stephen. And obviously, his failure of Emily kind of bleeds into his failure with Emily kind of bleeds into his failure with Stephen by extension.
I sometimes wonder if failing Emily, like Mark Frederick did, had to do with the dynamic of a father with a daughter as opposed to a father with a son. Because uh, when my son was growing up, I interacted differently with him than I did with my daughters. I think I had less patience with him when he was younger. I was a little bit more demanding, a little bit more. You're going to need to do this type of attitude. Uh, Whereas with my daughters, it was more of a gentler leadership, I think. And then even with when Stefan came along, the dynamic between a grandfather and a grandson is different than the dynamic between a father and a son.
Emily's mother sucked.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
She did not in any way
All
bring
right,
up her daughter.
I'm coming. Do we even know her mom? I think she is not alive, right? By the start of the series. All right. So next, Daimonaris and Namo. Your thoughts on them?
They made my skin crawl. Ugh. And every scene with those two on the stage by themselves, when they interacted with each other, I would literally, the hair on the back of my neck would stand up because it was so creepy to me.
I loved the line. I
Uh-huh.
think it encapsulated that relation. I'd rather stick my cock in a wasp nest. Whew. That line going to stick with me for a while. Ooh.
Okay. I don't know. I think for the first book, at least I found Daimonaris more interesting to read for me than Namor. Namor just came off as some maybe big bad guy or something like. Maybe by the end with his actions, I kind of the threat he was kind of that was foreshadowed with him. I kind of maybe felt it by the end. Definitely, I had to feel it. But Daimonaris, she's such a mess of a character. But frankly, maybe in a way, I don't know. Maybe I'm just weird. I enjoyed reading sections with her a bit more than Namor at least. And what's I don't she's will I even say she's well written? She actually serves her function, but like she's such a weird character overall. She just come obsesses over her brother, um, does whatever he asks, has this big ego and um such a horrible worldview, and then the whole deal with Deben, which is another person we need to actually talk about too. What sort of what are your thoughts on Deben? Do you like his writing, or as a character, can you empathize with him in any form, or like the negatives around him is like, or you can't reconcile the negatives around him with any kind of redeeming qualities? I'm
Daenerys
asking
really
a
was.
question.
She was Cersei with no brains.
Ah, I wanted to leave that till the end actually, because I think actively the book itself and the series kind of is in a conversation like with all literatures, usually with past contemporaries and current ones, right? And I usually used to say it. I said I think um Namor and Daemonaris will be, if you are familiar with A Song of Ice and Fire, they will be Viserys and Daenerys if Daenerys was dumb and Viserys was actually the smart person. Do you agree? Did, did you guys hear me?
Oh yeah, we were.
I'm waiting to hear
I
Ty say
said
something.
On this topic specifically, I'm only on book one. I didn't really have much written down. I thought I could just kind of just get my raw thoughts, and I was like, man, I sound like an amateur compared to y'all. So I was like, well, let me just
Not
let you
at
take it
all.
away.
Not at all.
Hey,
I mean, I had some general thoughts about the book I was waiting to get for the last, I guess, talking point, which was the what do you call it, the meta.
yeah.
I do have some talking points I do want to bring up there. Kind of what I want.
Okay,
I guess for
so
I don't really have much for characters right now.
all right, okay, let's just move on a bit. Okay, so your thoughts on Deben, and Labran. What do you what was your take, like your general thoughts on you?
I had no respect for Devin whatsoever. He just seemed like a spoiled person that was just, I don't know, I'm not sure how to put it. He had his little impotent world where he could have been an influence in the world at large, but he got, because of circumstances, he was sort of locked inside this cage that I think he ended up making for himself because he did not resist any of the things that
His
were
brother died.
done. Yeah,
His brother stepped up to the heritage and died.
Mm.
yeah.
And I think that was a formative thing. And all he did was retreat ever since that moment.
Hmm.
Frankly, to me, I think uh Deben is Stefan's parallel for the southern side. Actually, to me, it's just pathetic overall. Like, yeah, I get the horrible background with the brother and what happened to, I think, Labran, their dad, right, was imprisoned and whatnot. So, but like, it's just, if you just look at it, like, Stefan fed into his fears. Stefan like fed into his hates. He's like just the worst of his like. With Stefan, how did it manifest? He fed into his fears, refused to help out with the wars, like went like because of his fears, went to seek out Namor, right? Which is the literal devil. He sought out Nemo. You go again because of his like hate for the highborn. Like even when Dorilian brought, will I say, an olive branch or something, he kind of spat on his face then, and he fed into his worst qualities to the extent that even this culture he kinds of champions and does lip service about trying to make great or make great again or whatever. He ends up spitting on it, like by forcefully doing it the other way around. Like he forcefully took a wife when you are supposed to, with the matriarchal culture of the Celts, it's the woman who chooses, and he twisted that. Now you go to Deben because of his fears. He's been, frankly, I'm going to use a bit of a vulgar word phrase here, like mentally cocked by your child. Like he feels, yeah, he feels he has this strong inferiority complex towards your child. How pathetic do you have to be as a father to be that? Then again, he fed into his worst traits. Like, what sort of perverse um um mind has this? He only indulges virgins. He only indulges virgins, and he only indulges them just once. Like, so pathetic. And then this other plot line between he and Demonaris, you understand?
That was
Oh
horrible.
God. Yeah,
That was,
like
that was
I can't like there's nothing so to me actually, in a way, I think he's even if he had like the freedom of Stefan, he would have been worse. If he had the freedom of Stefan, if no what are they calling it? No um guillotine was hanging on his neck in the face of like in the form of Labran being under the influence of Mark Frederick, his fear of Mark Frederick, Mark Frederick in his heydays, you understand, he was probably the greatest general or warrior during that period, and also his fear of his own son, so pathetic, and also Sebald, yeah, he can't be understated. The existence of Sebald, if not for those people, I think what he would have ended up doing actually would have been much worse than whatever Stefan ended up doing. Because like Stefan's case was like he had all the freedom, even the closest person that could call him into account, sort of what made them close in the first place is what made her unable to actually do anything about it. When you egg on your child growing up, you like egging on, like egg them on. You understand? How do you then, when they grow up, kind of call them into account? Like he couldn't actually do anything. So this guy, whatever thought just comes to his mind, let me give 500 kills, real slot. Let me take out like, let me strip off this highborn of his post, and like whatever just comes, he goes. This, he just goes on a whim and his instinct. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Deben. He's just a horrible, like pathetic. Don't even let's not even talk about how he treats Leviathan and the whole incident with Leviathan.
That whole
So I think
situation with Devin and Leviathan, that made me so angry as a teacher who worked with special needs kids, and I can see that uh, he was just going to have to be dealt with in a different way. He was Leviathan could not connect with the world the same way everyone else did. And yet Devin made zero attempt to find a way to connect with him or to help Leviathan connect with the world. And that was such a waste. And I lost all respect for him because of his relationship with Leviathan.
I don't. What do you guys think about his belief of Leviathan not being his seed? Is there any credence to that? Do you think there's any credence?
What was that you said? I didn't quite catch it.
Like his belief about Leviathan not being his get. Like he believes Leviathan isn't from him.
From what
Oh,
I could understand from the book, he did not want any children. He
Mhm.
didn't want to give away any of his power. He wanted to be the sole center
Oh,
of his
oh,
universe. And he got one heir, and that was enough. So he did not want that child to begin with. And then
okay,
after
okay.
that, that was his handle to get Dorillion to stand in line. All he had to do was pressure and threaten
Uh,
Leviathan. And so that was
oh
his
my God,
control over his son that he could control in
son.
no other
Yeah,
way.
that guy is stupid.
I just took it as him just not wanting responsibility for Lev at all. He just didn't want anything to do with
All
him.
right. Yeah, because I think in a way the series kind like the book itself, the story itself kind of reinforces the fact it's actually his child. Like he kind of gets reincarnated in a similar manner again. You understand? With the Demonaries plotline,
Yeah.
it's the same Deben again. You understand? So like, that's just phantoms he had in his mind. So is there any other character we are yet to touch on? Maybe the king that could have been in Johnton.
I don't know. I missed after conversation. Or this one specifically.
Okay, I'm saying like my view of Johnton, like it's like,
Uh,
uh, yeah, the king that could have been. I think it's unfortunate. Uh, is there much to say? He's actually a great person overall, and on his own character itself, I don't think I could speak on it, but I could just say maybe, but I could talk about how it influences the story itself. Um, if Johnson had been alive till the end, I think that series ends in one book. Do you agree?
I don't know. There were some pretty formidable enemies against Mark Frederick. So if he hadn't been killed
Uh,
by a horse, it could have happened any one of 60 ways.
fair point, fair point. All
I
right, all right.
kind of think that Jonathan could have been a more tragic figure as a king than Stefan was, because he would have had the good intentions, he would have had the guidance, and yet no one is going to have the personality and the charisma that Mark Frederick had, and I think he would have tried his best, made wise decisions as much as he possibly could have, and still been taken down by all of the plotting going on behind the scenes by all of the different factions.
Namor would have had to move on him.
Yeah, he would have had to.
And
And the
how
seven,
he
Okay,
would have
yes, yes.
he would have caused a war. Namor would have, and that probably would have torn it apart because Jonathan did have the empathy. He did have the respect of
Yeah,
all the factions. So to me, that made him a target for Namor.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. And
So
not to
I don't
spoil.
know as it would have been different. It might have been a less tragic end.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah. I not to spoil. I kind of agree. Because I think even for the other person it works for, it took Namor kind of underestimating him massively, right? And I don't think that's something Jonathan enjoys. Uh, Jonathan, like everyone views his intellect and the like you guys said, the charisma is already there and everything. So yeah, he will have made his move against Jonathan even quicker than maybe as quick as he does with Dorelia.
Namor was trying to
Uh
restore racial purity, and John then stood in the way of that.
Mhm.
Mark Frederick's entire line had to go if you follow Namor's logical agenda. He wanted to
yeah,
claim
yeah,
all the Triempery for himself and restore the
yeah.
stubborn race to purity. And Mark
Good.
Frederick stood in his way, and therefore Jonathan would have totally stood in his way.
I'm
And
going to have to
since,
take a quick time out.
yeah, you got to feed your cat.
Yeah, he's insistent.
Yeah. Okay, because I think we're about to go to the last two sections. Or so the boy, should we wait for him?
I'm going to have to feed animals soon, too. So
Yeah,
when we get
because I
a little
wanted
bit further
to.
down the line, I've got livestock
Shoot, I
outside.
had to do it mid podcast.
Yeah. Uh,
So if you're going to
because
cover the
like,
last 2 points, you're going to need to do it, or I'm going to have to say sorry, guys, because I've got
all right.
I've got a time.
So the next one is the themes. Um, what themes spoke to you the best here? Like, what themes did you touch on, or like, what themes will you say this book specifically examines
It's a long
the
list.
main
The
themes?
story, yeah, it covered a lot: political divisions,
Yeah, you
aristocratic
can.
snobbery, commercial addiction to wealth,
Yeah,
blinding morality, and that continuous march to protect wealth, stepping over the line and stepping over the line further and further and further, deeper and deeper into the pit of corruption. Cryolane was a terrifying reflection of this, and we see it in our own world, the wealth gap creating so many disparities.
true. So,
And then
but
the
like, what
metaphysical,
are
as you pointed out, the
yeah,
simultaneity of time and the tendency of patterns to repeat.
true. So, but like, which ones will you say like are the highlights for you? At least maybe three. Let's just emphasize three. Then
Are you asking like which ones like do we like
like
emphasize?
the highlights. Yeah, like the
Mm.
ones you want to emphasize, like the highlights for you. Maybe just three. Let's just discuss like three. Then um
Specific theme. That's hard. This book goes over. You could probably make a better list of like themes that the book doesn't cover. This book covers.
What one doesn't it cover? Honestly,
Yeah, I was about to say this book covers just about everything.
all right. Okay. So
Um,
uh okay. So
yes,
I think let's go
doesn't
with
cover sexual abuse. That's the one theme it
government.
doesn't step into.
yeah, yeah.
Ah, right? I think so. Yeah, yeah. I don't remember any specific one. Yeah. Okay, so let's see. Let's go with perceptions, like the perception itself, then governance and prejudice. Okay, so are you okay with these three?
You said what? You said what?
Perception, like perception itself, like how we perceive things, like it's kind of constructed into the very fabric of the uh, metaphysics of the series itself, with the high bonds, they are empaths.
Oh yeah.
They
Mhm.
kind of, yeah, like before interacting with people, they already have these flavors or kind of shades of to them. They give them flavors or shapes, like they have these perceptions towards the people already. Then you go even towards the people themselves, like even the Kells, how they perceive the highborns themselves. Um, you see, when we go to Leviathan himself, how does he perceive the world? People see the world normally. We see our physical. We see you see white. You see the block. You see this. While he sees it in, will I say, arcanic, like magically. Will I say magically? What's the best word there for Leviathan? So, anyways, like what I loved about the use of perception in this series is because it kind of bleeds into most of the themes like it tackles with, if you like, prejudice itself, you know, prejudice itself thrives of the sort of perception you have of other people, like you and others, you understand. They believe, like we go to the dogmen, like perceived as um these monsters, the Celts perceived as savages, the the Storbans, right? They perceive themselves as these pure races and stuff, and all the hates and dislike and kind of aversions they have towards each other is kind of, it feeds into these generally. And I think yes, like I'm saying, like the hate, the aversions and the dislike they have on each other, it ties back into these perceptions they have about each other, and like they are so rigid about it, they don't want to undo it. Like we talked about it with like um Stefan himself. You have this view, you believe something is white, the same thing comes and it looks black to you, but they remain adamant into that, self-deluding themselves into kinds of the thing being black nonetheless. And so like essentially I think uh, the message with perception is we shouldn't to perceive things, you understand, you don't just stick to um, um, things like you believe constructed within yourself. You have to interact and kind of go out and experience those things to truly perceive something. You actually have to experience those things, and we can see how that works, especially with the titular character. Not okay, so Daniel, yeah, he's the titular character, Dorilian. Goes there, he experienced the Kells, he experienced Mark Frederick, uh, as well as the Stubborns, and came to his own conclusion. And the series, the story goes on doing that. We see it, and during does it his own. Some people after doing that, well, we later with Nap Reese and some other characters, we see this again. They experience it and they come to their conclusions, while others reject, deny, or refuse to even go on that journey. So that's what I think about that specific theme.
I think
I know
this book really examines bigotry from almost a dichotomy viewpoint, because it takes racial bigotry, it takes the wealthy looking down on the Celts because all they are is farmers and they don't develop their land and they don't do anything. So it takes colonialism to a whole different level. It puts women into a certain box, and it looks at bigotry from many, many angles. And then the dichotomy that pulls it in the odd direction, which I found very odd, is they had a master race, and everybody looked up to and had to cater to the hybrid because they held together the creation. And so it takes that theme of bigotry and dissects it with 1,000 different threads.
Yeah.
And that was very interesting to see that all under one
I think,
cover of one
yeah.
book.
Yes, yes. Okay, so that's. Is there any other theme anyone wants to talk about? If not, we just go to the meta and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
All right. So about the meta, you said you had some things to say, TY?
Oh yeah, well, I figured you're going to ask like, what type of classics does this book draw on? I think, for me personally, I saw a lot of Dune mixed with sort of Farseer, specifically the first trilogy. I guess with Dune, sort of you get Herbert's like architecture. You get the great houses, the indispensable resource, spice, the analogy with the real, and then sort of the genetic destiny that's tied to that resource. And then I would say with I don't know if I'm lagging here. I would say with I guess sort of why it also reminded me of Farser was sort of the like inner life between, you can draw a comparison between the skill and empathetic bond, and sort of how the bloodline magic like runs through the royals. So those are the two that I would say in terms of, I guess, structure or world building and plot, I would say the book draws on. And then I guess with character dynamics, I saw a lot of, I know you haven't read it, I'm pretty sure Janny has, the Chronicles of Amber, sort of like relationships there. I saw a lot of similarities. That's all I gotta say on it.
Okay.
A little bit
okay,
of Outlander. Little bit of Outlander crossing dimensions between worlds.
Yeah.
The Mentatolores almost felt like Shadows of Earth, and going through a portal, where they borrowed and pulled characters from other realities.
Yeah, that's true. And yeah, you've mentioned some. I'm surprised you didn't like mention maybe A Song of Ice and Fire.
Oh, well, I mean, that was just a given with the politics. And I don't know if we
I
consider
didn't
it classic
see
yet.
a parallel so much to Ice and Fire, because in Ice and Fire, the nastiest people always won.
That's true.
And that
yeah.
wasn't always the case here. This one was more balanced.
Yeah. All right. For me, I think what I'm not necessarily saying maybe paralleling it, but a response in a sense, because this kind of the cruelty, or maybe I don't want to use the word indulgence. There's a better word to use here, but like some of the violence, and especially like the sexual kind, like the response from L. Stephens, like you could discuss themes of like bigotry, misogyny, these prejudices, like intergenerational blood feuds and hatred, just injustices, and even slavery. You understand? Eugenics and every of these things, you could discuss all of them and tastefully without actually needing to go on page, have constant gruesome things happening on page. So to me, in that form, you understand, I'm seeing an active conversation. And beyond that, again, also will I say spiraling, You know, the like he sets up this world, the structures, the parties and factions involved, and the history, and right from time planned it out with the seven houses, with the races, with uh, the more lesser conflicts, or let's say the closer conflict, like the ones we know, like between each other, like the characters having their vendettas, for example, Stephen and Dorillian. Then you go outside, we see the bigger conflict of the diadem and the real and Leo, right? As well as the face of the diadem here is Namo. You understand? Like she's doing a lot, but right from time it was still contained without letting it spiral out. Because frankly speaking, half of what is stopping, and maybe it will never even conclude, is the fact that everything just spiraled out. There's the Iron Islanders, there's the Valerians, there's the Stars, the Lannisters, there's the Golden Company, Essos, you understand? So that's just what I'm going to say here. And I don't think I have any other thing to add here
I think
in that
she reached
aspect.
back further in time because A Song of Ice and Fire and all of that are pretty recent, considering when she
Yeah.
began to develop the series. She was developing this series when she was still in high school, when she was almost a child.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the influences that I see come before a lot of what you would call modern fantasy, where it shifted gears. I see a lot of this influence maybe from Edison, from the Worm or Ouroboros, the Mistress of Mistresses, in the
Okay.
setting, the descriptions of the settings and the gemstones and the buildings and the depth of the way her set pieces looked. That goes back to Edison, and she read a lot of those
Okay.
antecedents of the fantasy
Please,
back in that time period,
can
which
you
was
maybe
long before George Martin
type the
stepped
name in
up.
the chat?
Excuse me?
Can you type the name of that name in the chat? The name of the
The name
book
of the
you're
book
talking
series.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll put that down because yeah, the descriptions of the settings reminded me very much, but it's way, way, way too lush for most modern readers. It would be
Prof, as in the meantime, can you maybe give your own observations for the influences?
so there you are. I could get the books; they're in the other room. She mentioned Burnett Swan. That was all back to the Ballantine fantasy series that Betty Ballantine
Okay.
and Ian Ballantine brought forward as antecedents to Tolkien. The
Okay.
whole idea of the enhancers and the crowns that they used to translocate.
Uh,
A lot of these would go
I'll look
back to
into
some
it.
earlier fantasy. I even got some of the echoes. I don't know if she ever read Jane Gaskell's Atlan series, which is almost sword and sorcery, but not quite, because it has an angle of women marrying guys who were part serpent, and the offspring didn't always survive. So I see echoes of way earlier fantasy that most people today don't know exists.
I didn't know those
Yeah.
existed. Of course, during my late teens and early 20s, I was exclusively science fiction because I grew up on classic Asimov and Robert Heinlein, and gradually worked my way into Robert Howard's Sword and Sorcery. But I didn't know that the
You never
world of
read
fantasy.
Gorman Gast. You never heard of
No, never heard
Mervyn
of
Peake. You
him.
never heard of. You're missing some
Oh
of the
shit, I've read
richest.
that one.
Yeah, you're missing some of the richest fantasy ever written, but it's not in modern streamlined prose style. You're going to have to handle that. They describe the setting. You're going to have to handle that. It's a lot more lush. If you've read
Yeah.
Ricardo Pinto,
No.
His roots go back to some of that stuff too. The Master Series by Ricardo Pinto.
Well, I've got some good reading ahead of
You
me.
do, and
Yeah.
Under the Radar reviewed
Me
that one because
too.
I kicked his ass until he read it. So
All right.
yeah, there's a
I think
huge volume
that
of fantasy that was written
Yeah.
before Tolkien or contemporary with Tolkien.
yeah.
Austin Tappan writes Islandia. They're just listen. People
well,
say, oh, well, it was before the internet. It doesn't exist. Wrong. But I think that L.L. Stevens is aware of a lot of those books.
Yeah.
And she mentioned a
yeah.
few of them on the live stream she did the other night. And I had read all the books she was
Yeah.
talking about. Catherine Kurtz, the Derini
yeah.
series, all that came
You've read them
before.
all?
Oh, yeah. I read all of that because that's all there was when I was growing up. That was what
I'm
was
going
coming
to
out
actually need to.
at the time.
I will need to get to them just. Yeah.
So yeah, my
Okay,
bookshelves are packed with titles that nobody's heard of, and I suspect that she read a lot of these antecedents, and that she was influenced probably very little by Martin, because this series was already crystallized by the time those books came along.
Mm.
Alright.
George also does draw a lot on other people before him, like
Definitely.
Tad Williams.
Definitely. No one
Well, there
doesn't
were
draw.
guys before Tad Williams.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I think we've kind of talked enough, and it was great having all of you here. This is my first ever live stream, so
Me
you
too.
can see I think it wasn't as smooth as I would do better next time.
It's
And
unfortunate
plan
Chidi couldn't
better.
be here.
But honestly, what? Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah,
But
hopefully
thank you guys
here next
all.
time.
Actually, you guys all said you were fun to talk to, as well as you guys gave a lot of insightful points, and I can't wait to speak to you guys another time, maybe for Kel King if we plan it in the
Yeah.
future. So thank you very
I'll do
much.
my research beforehand next time.
We can, yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very
No
much for the
problem.
invite. It's always a
Yes.
pleasure to talk
Okay,
about a
thank
book
you.
that I enjoyed.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. We can end it.
Thank
Bye.
you. It was really nice to speak with all of you.
Yep.